For almost 25 years, I've been posing and pondering a question. Why do people do risky things? Now, obviously, there are the types of risks we should take for our personal and professional development, but mostly I focused on the ill-advised behaviors that threaten our health, that threaten our lives. Before I get into my answer to that question, let me tell you a little bit about what it is I do. That is why I think I know what it is I know. So I'm a health educator. I serve young people from middle school through college, their parents, teachers, and the community. My elevator pitch is, I teach the art and science of healing, health, and happiness. And yeah, just like the looks on your face, people are like, you what? You're a physician? Not a doctor, is my response. You must be a therapist or a psychologist. No, I mean, I do study psychology, and I meet with students a lot, but I'm not a licensed therapist, I'm not a researcher. I'm a teacher. I explain, look, well, this was back before YouTube anyway. What did you need to do if you wanted to learn to play tennis or the piano, right? You went to a teacher, a coach. You learned some skills, and then you practice. Well, as it turns out, if you want to heal from past emotional injuries, if you want to be healthy, if you want to be happy, this is skill-based and it's practice-based, right? So more specifically, what do? I help people to understand how at the intersection of culture and psychology, we somehow get convinced we don't need to wear a helmet on a bicycle, or we don't need to wear sunscreen at the beach, or if we're going to have sex, we don't need to protect ourselves from sexually transmitted infections. I help people to understand the crazy witch's brew of variables and dynamics that goes into issues like eating disorders, addictions to alcohol and other drugs, and violence. Right? Why does violence happen? I teach people about these things hopefully to prevent them. Now, in addition to what I call the survive part of my career, luckily about 10 years ago I started to learn and teach about things like mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology. That is, what does ancient wisdom all the way to modern science say about how to not just survive life, right, but how to thrive. So, why do I do all this, right? I do this because I want people to be healthy, and it really plagues me. I think about this all the time. Why would somebody who has a college degree ahead of them do something that might endanger their life? Well, today I want to help answer that question. So, the answer to this question came to me, as luck would have it, in a TED Talk. Some of you have seen Brene Brown's 2010 TED Talk, where she talks about, well, it was like, when I watched it was like getting the answer, the holy grail, to why do people do risky things. And the answer was shame. I'm not going to repeat her talk, you know where to find it. She speaks eloquently about the negative power of shame and the positive power of vulnerability and wholeheartedness. But there seems to be some misunderstanding about shame. That is that you have to somehow end up on the front page of the newspaper because you did some radically deviant behavior. And now while that would do it, shame is an everyday sort of a thing. Like, for example, a lot of you drink coffee, right? Anybody drink coffee? You get your coffee, you're going to class, you're going to your job site, and you stumble, your cell phone goes flying, your coffee goes flying, all your friends see, right? This could be grounds for shame. By the way, not just because you have friends looking at you. By the way, the definition of shame is fear of disconnection. So if I perceive that my inadequacy leads to a sense of being unworthy, that is, people are going to reject me, I could be in shame. Right? So everyday events where inadequacy meets unworthiness could lead to shame. And so as a health educator, it's kind of interesting because I've worked with students from this school. I've worked with students at a university across the street that attracts the best and the brightest. And you think that they would have this great sense of self-worth and self-esteem, but you get them behind closed doors, and what you find is that a lot of us, not just the kids, right, us, we adults, are walking around with a sense of inadequacy, a nagging, gnawing sense that we are not good enough. Does this sound familiar? Right? Every day, something is wrong with me, I'm not good enough. So today I want to try to give you a formula to how we can deal with this, because I think it's causing some major problems. So what is that formula? Let's get started with that. What if we could actually feel adequate in every moment? So in every moment we feel adequate. Like, think about it. Anybody watch a baby learn to walk? Right? Is the baby being mean to themselves as they're falling down and learning to walk? Right? Feel like adequate in every moment, even as we strive to do more and do better. Okay? That's the goal. So we're going to take a look at some of these words right now that are going to help us to look at. We're going to dissect terms. This is what I do with my career. I dissect slang terms. We call it media literacy. I dissect language we use every day, because language determines our values and it sends messages. So here's the term, good enough. Right? If you look at this term, good enough, and you take it apart, it's two words that are arguably good words. One of them, the first one, good. Need I say more? And enough. How many of you would, for example, love to have enough funding for your arts program in your schools? Or for your nonprofit? Or how about enough funding for the next 2 years in your startup? Anybody would like that? Yeah. But how come all of a sudden you put them together, good enough becomes a bad word? Right? So you're like, oh, Donnovan, you're trying out for this play. Well, no one else tried out, so okay, you'll do. Right? It becomes a bad word. It becomes barely sufficient. But again, sufficient is good, right? How many people would like it if the world had sufficient food for most of the population of the world tonight? Right? Wouldn't that be a good thing? So we've taken these words that aren't bad words and we've turned them into bad words. Here's another one. Average. Right? If you told me this talk was average today, I'd be crushed. But why is that? How many of you would love to do an average TED Talk? Anybody? And by the way, this leads to some big problems, because there's this thing called the Lake Wobegon effect. You've heard of this? Where 97% of you think you're above average drivers. All of a sudden, really smart people are bad at math, right? Because average, I'm not a mathematician, but average is like a statistical, it's mandatory that if you line up elephants and you're like, there's 3 of them, and somebody's got to be in the middle, right? Someone's got to be average on whatever scale. And yet we've turned average into a bad word. But you want a better word that's even worse? Try to use the following word as a compliment sometime. Actually don't, because you're gonna lose friends. Go up to a friend and tell them that something they did was mediocre. Right? What's funny about this is the word mediocre comes from the same root in Latin as middle, median, medium. Again, these are statistical facts. We can't avoid having things, if we're going to put things on a spectrum or on a bell curve, something's going to come in the middle. But when you say mediocre, that's not average. That's down here, right? So, and I call this talk Settling for Happiness, a little bit ironic, I guess, but then let's talk about that. So settling. Now look, we're in America, so if I have a product, I never want to settle for anything but the best, right? You've heard this? And you want to settle for that partner, there's better fish in the sea. Settling. It's a bad word, right? How did that happen? But here's the thing. How many of you want to settle down someday? Anybody want to settle down? Well, yeah. And then when you do settle down in your house, and then you want to actually hang up pictures and move out of those boxes, and you want to settle in, right? Some of you still have boxes in your garage and stuff from the last move, right? So settling is not a bad word. How did this happen? So here's where we're going to go with the solution now. I'm going to argue that something as simple as language, again, we're going from language to language. What's the way out of this mess? Being versus doing. Now, I'm not saying being versus doing, meaning that doing is bad. Let's be very clear about something. Has anybody noticed that our world is kind of damaged right now? You notice that? Our world needs everybody in this audience to get up every day of your life and do amazing things to help heal our world. So let's be very clear that doing is important. But here's what I'm saying. That actually, if we think the way to better doing is to call ourselves inadequate and not good enough, a lot of us are going to end up not getting out of our covers in the morning because we're so afraid of going into the day because we feel so inadequate. So having a sense of adequacy is actually the way to do it. This is kind of radical if you think about it. Right, here's what I'm asking you. Before you put your head on your pillow at night, ask yourself, when you're evaluating your life and evaluating your day, to take out all the doing. So to take off your sweatshirt with your university, all your PhDs and MAs, and even I got the laundry done. Take it all out of the equation and assess yourself not on what you did today, but what you are. Sounds really radical, right? Try it sometime. Nothing about my doing gets included in how I evaluate my day and myself. But it actually isn't that radical. Because here's what we're going to do. Try this with people you care about. How many of you have dogs? Okay, so imagine if you applied the doing scenario equation to your dog. Rover's getting a little bit old. He's not fetching the ball anymore. And you get a family meeting and you're like, yeah, so Rover's got to go. I'm sorry, Rover. The whole tennis ball thing. And, it's over between us. Would you do that? Don't raise your hand, by the way, because that's a shame. Or your best friend. You're like your best friend fails in the swimming competition. They don't get a good grade on the test, or they don't get into law school. They took the bar twice, whatever. You're like, yeah, sorry, Jenny. It's over between us. I'm shocking. For your best friend. Right? Would you reject your friends based on doing? I hope not. And your family and your dog. How many of us every day of our life reject ourselves based on I spilled my coffee, I was awkward at that party, I didn't make every cupcake from scratch from my child. Right? Women are particularly hard on themselves because they're asked by our society to do everything. Be the CEO and make every cupcake personally. Right? So this is insanity, right? Being versus doing, right? We have to start to understand, right, that we are human beings. We're not human doings. By the way, let me just take a little side note real quick. Do you know that most of the things that we feel ashamed of are not actually ethical violations? You get that, right? Like, guilt should be mostly for if you do something wrong, like if you run a traffic light, I guess, and you get a ticket, you have guilt about that, or you kick the dog or something. Shame is another story. Shame is I am bad. But you realize that both those categories doesn't even matter. Like, for example, having fat on your thighs. I looked, right? It's not in the Ten Commandments. It's not in the Quran. It's not in the New Testament. Being awkward at a party. It's like, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not be awkward at a party. Having your house messy when people come over. No, most of these things are not ethical violations. They're not legal. They're not in the penal code. Right? So we feel ashamed about these things when they have no bearing on anything about that. Okay, so you get it, right? Being and doing and shame. So let's get into some solutions. And we're going to do this out loud. So, here's where we're going to get into some solutions. Say this softly out loud to yourself. Out loud. Right. Let's do it again. I'm a human being. Not a human doing. Let that sink in for a second, right? That you are more than what you do, right? Let me tell you how serious this is. We get really serious for a moment. Would you ever whisper in your child's ear, like every day before school, "Sweetie, she's really pretty. I don't know about you. He's really smart and handsome and good at sports. You gotta kind of work harder, dear. And you're so short, and I don't know if you're ever gonna be good enough. And you try so hard, but you never change. Why even try?" Would you ever do that to somebody you love? It's terrible, right? It's abusive, actually. This is the voice of shame. This is our inner critic. It's not our friend. And one more thing. And here's what's at stake. When we don't know the difference between being and doing, something bad can really happen. And here's how it looks. What if there are people in this neighborhood, in high school and college, that don't know the difference between being and doing? And so one day they experience a really difficult consequence in the world of their doing, right? A failure, a perceived failure in the world of their doing. And they don't know the difference, right? So then they draw the conclusion, I'm a failure at doing. Maybe it's time to stop being. So let's try another one. Exactly as I am. I am enough. Even as I aspire to do better. Exactly as I am. I am enough. Even as I aspire to do better. Remember, happiness. Anybody want to be happy? Happiness is a state. We don't say, how are you today, Donnovan? I'm doing happy. Right? No, we don't do that, right? I am happy or I am not happy. Happiness is a state of being. Right? And in this, we teach a course on happiness across the way. And let's be very clear. If you can never be satisfied, you'll never be happy. Right? So happiness is a state of being. So I'll close with this. I believe as a health educator that if we were to embrace our enoughness, positive risk-taking would go up and negative risk-taking would go down. And what would that look like? We would drink less alcohol. We would numb out less with drugs. And we would worry less. How many people would love that, to worry less? To ruminate less. We would forgive ourselves from our past things. We would trust ourselves to face the future and not worry. Right? Violence. Even just this week, violence racking our world. A lot of violence, as we saw the last speaker, is rooted in shame. Good enough is the antithesis, the antidote to that. And our bodies, how do we treat our bodies every day? We call ourselves ugly and fat and the things we do to ourselves. Maybe if we felt good enough, we could come to the conclusion that every baby should know when they're born, which is that we are supremely lovable and profoundly worthy. Would you settle for that? I would. Thank you.